for 18, almost 20 years, I was your neighbor in Bel Air. So very familiar with Kechi. Came up here to a lot of events. Always liked the card glass. It was a garage sale or whatever they called that. They have once a year. Yeah, that was always got some good stuff in. And I was talking to Todd. I can remember 4 different city administrators you had over that time. So I was fortunate to stay in Bel Air as long as I was. But I grew up in Kansas in a farm in northeast Kansas. I actually have a BA in ag business. And so I also have a master's in public administration from Wichita State. And so after I graduated, I was the department director for Jefferson and Reno counties. In Kansas, there's what's called a noxious weed law for farmers. And that's what, with my ag degree, that's how I got into local government. And then others at Reno County decided I wanted to do more than just that. I enjoyed local government. I worked directly with the county commissioners in both of those. And so I went back to Wichita State. So I drove from, that was back when you couldn't do it all online. I had to actually drive to classes. And so I drove from Hutch twice a week and then not in the evenings to get my master's. And then as soon as I graduated, I was in Cheney for about 6 years and then was in Bel Air for the remaining time. And I was active on the league and different things like that. So I'm familiar with a small town. I mean, when Cheney was about the size of Kechi, and then when I got to Bel Air, it was smaller than it is today, for sure.
Before you go on 1 second,
yes.
Would you mind using the mic, please? Because I know on the live feed, it won't pick his voice up if you don't actually use the mic directly.
Okay.
And then secondly, the other question I have is we can't see what's being displayed up there. Is that possible to send it to our screens, please?
Stop reading it.
Yeah, all we can see is ourselves at the moment.
That mic is picking you up. I just checked the mic.
Okay.
Okay.
So
I just wanted to make sure there's been some concerns about not being able to hear the speaker.
Okay.
Which one were you wanting there?
We can't see that on our screen.
Presentation. There you go.
Thank you.
Okay, and we've got, you'll get copies of the presentation as well tonight. The printer's working a little bit slow.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of slides to go through. So, but you'll get copies of it tonight, so you can take those home, and there'll be some information on there that I'm not going to completely cover, so you can read it later. But again, in Cheney, we did water, sewer, police, fire. We actually had natural gas there, so we had a gas system just like you do. We had a golf course, things like that. And you're familiar what Bel Air does. So we're going to do some introductions. We're going to do some roles, responsibilities. We're going to talk about finance and budgeting. We're going to talk about strategic planning and how that relates to your budget and actually get some strategic planning in your budget. So I introduced myself. And so what I want to know, just hear from you. I don't know if your other council members know this, maybe because you're a small community, but I don't. So we're going to start with the mayor. Why do you live in Kechi?
I prayed a dangerous prayer, and this is where the Lord led us to in Kechi. And we moved my mother across country with us, and we needed an apartment within our home, which is not an easy thing to find in the state of Kansas. And the house that we have, the family built a walkout basement apartment for their grandmother. And so that's how we ended up in Kechi.
Okay, so you're not from Kansas then?
I am not.
Oh.
I'm from the West Coast, Washington State.
Okay. Why'd you run for mayor?
I ran for mayor because the people continued to say over the last few years that they wanted a voice on the dais, that they wanted someone who would speak up for them, that would interact with them. And I was willing to do that, and I just felt led by the Lord to take steps of obedience and run for mayor and see what would happen.
Okay.
And here I am.
Matt, why do you live in Kechi?
We moved here, I'm originally from Kansas City. We moved here 19 years ago via the Philippines. We'd spent 2 years in the Philippines as missionaries, working tribes missions. And when we came back to the States, we had an opportunity to come here, and there was a job opportunity for me at Trinity Academy, where I was principal and head of school for 10 years. My wife is from Northeast Colorado, farm girl. So when we were looking for, by the way, when we flew in from Manila on a Monday and came to Wichita on a Tuesday. We were jet lagged. We looked at 49 houses, and K96 just threw me off because I'm east, west, north, south. And we landed up here in Kechi, and my question was, how far is it from Trinity? And my wife was thrilled that we were out in the country.
Okay.
In the country, per se, which she loved. And so we've been here 19 years, finished raising our family here. Why did I run for council? I ran for council after my tenure at Trinity. Was asked to run, got a lot of just leadership background, leadership experience, thought I could add value, and so my goal was to add value and to add leadership and experience to the council. So I've been on council since 2019.
Good. Todd?
We moved here in January 2008, and my wife was teaching at Central Christian Academy, and the kids were going there. And she was sometimes making 2 and 3 trips a day from Derby, where we were, so we definitely needed to find someplace closer. And I think Matt may have had some influence of we should look at Kechi. And we just fell in love with it, a great place to raise a family. And so we got the kids graduated, and I felt that this was a way. I was asked to run. We were looking for business leaders to be on council, and so prayed about it, considered it, and ran. And this is my second term. I've been on 4.5 years now, and it's just a way to give back to the community.
Yeah. Okay. Kendra?
Hi. I live in Kechi because my parents built a house here 32 years ago. And it's the only place I've ever lived.
Okay.
So I decided that I would buy the house across the street from them a few years ago. So can't imagine living anywhere else. And I ran for council because I was volunteering a lot in the community and then kind of just got involved. Like we came to council meetings to share about the fair and stuff, and just kind of got involved. And I'm a local business owner, and just wanted to give my input on that, I guess. So
Good. Good. Paul's not here. Teresa?
So, after I got married, my husband and I lived in Wichita. Oh, I'm sorry. We had a small 2-bedroom home. We had 3 children, and as they grew, we needed to as well. I grew up just outside of Valley Center. My mom still lives in the house I grew up in, and this was close to her, an area that I was very familiar with. Found a great property and have lived here for, it will be 24 years on the 19th of this month, or next month, sorry. And I ran for council because I was requested to by a lot of people who thought that I could use my knowledge, my community service and customer service orientation to help better the community.
Good. Okay. Great. It's good. I like getting to know who I'm talking with and a little bit of your background and stuff. That helps me. And I also listen to hear, being in local government as long as I have, there are times when people want to get involved because they have an issue. And those are really the ones that are not necessarily cause the most problems, but they're in it for that one issue. And they either find out that they can't get their issue taken care of because it takes a majority vote and they don't have that, so then they just give up because they realize, well, I can't get anything done, my issue, no one will approve my issue. Or they get their issue fixed and then they don't care anymore and they're ready to move on because they got their problem solved. So I've seen both of those, and so it's good to hear that it's more about the community and giving back. That's the positive thing. So we're going to cover some fundamentals of local government, and these are things that I've learned over the years. I've had, I don't know how many mayors and council members through my tenure, and I think probably that's one of the things that I was good at, was working with council members and mayors, because I wouldn't have lasted as long as I did had I not been able to get along with people. So I pride myself in getting along with with people from all different walks of life. So good governance, we hear that term, but what is good governance? It really means running a government in a way that serves the people's interest through fair, transparent, and accountable processes. That's all it is. And there's different parts to that. You can see in that table that there's a participatory, accountable, transparent, responsive. All of those are pieces of what creates good governance. So decision making, that's an important part of what you do. Every meeting you have is making decisions. You're a policy maker. So some common steps in decision making are logical comparison. So you're comparing items, policies, etc., to make sure you're comparing apples to apples. So let's say Public Works wants to buy a backhoe, and the Public Works Director gets bids, and you have a Caterpillar and John Deere and you name the other companies. You always want to make sure that you're comparing apples to apples, that they're the same type of equipment, they have the same horsepower, lifting power, those types of things. So that's a simple part of due diligence, but it's important, if you're going to be fair, that you're comparing apples to apples. Then you want to look at the economical evaluation, is what are the costs? So you're going to get bids on that backhoe, so what are those costs? And is one a better value? Not necessarily. The low bid may not be the best bid. I always talked about that. What's the best value? So in other words, sometimes the graders are going to be different, even though they're going to be, one maybe 200 horsepower, one's 210 horsepower, one's 180 horsepower, but they're all similar. That's what they all compare each other to. So you have to look at, okay, is it better, maybe the bigger horsepower with the larger tires or whatever it is more expensive, but it's the better value. So that's important to look at, but you're always going to look at the cost. You've got political considerations. That's one thing I've always talked about with mayors, is that, there's always a political side and an organizational side to anything. So, for example, how does it affect your constituents? If there is that, does it actually affect your political future? We never want to admit that, but it certainly could. So that's always things you want to think about. Those are more on the policy side. For example, you're looking at an ordinance on chickens, whether or not you can have chickens. And I don't know if you've ever dealt with chickens. Most cities have, and it's always a hot issue, it seems like. But you want to be aware of, how does what that policy is, how does it affect your constituents? If you vote a certain way, are you going to lose a neighbor or a friend over that? Or are you going to lose your seat over that? Those are things you always want to be conscious about. And then, of course, the emotional factors. And what I mean by that is, so we go back to the backhoe. So Todd, all he buys is John Deere's because he thinks they're the best. And so that's the only thing he runs is John Deere. But your Caterpillar came in, a few thousand less. Is it right that John is saying, or Todd is saying that that's all I've always run is John Deere. We got to get John Deere. I don't care what the price difference is. John Deere's the way to go. So that's an emotional decision because he has John Deere's. He's had good luck with them. But this is not an emotional decision. This is a decision involving the taxpayers, and you're going to spend $100,000 on that. And so that can't be your only part, your reasoning for that is that you like John Deere's. You got to, and that may be the last thing you say is, it meets all these other criteria and I like John Deere's. That's okay. But you can't just go in and say, nah, I'm not looking at anything but a John Deere. So what about leadership versus management? We've all heard that. There's a difference between leadership and management. So you look at these two circles, and you see that a leader is people focused. So, for example, the leader inspires and motivates, empowers the team, coaches and develops talent, encourages innovation, builds team culture. And then also in that is sets clear, where it overlaps with management, is sets clear goals, solves problems, adapts to change, resolves conflict. Now the manager has a role and a title, organizes and plans, ensures the tasks are completed, controls the budget, enforces policies, manages resources, and implements strategies. So in your organization here, where do you think council lies? Is council a leader or a manager?
Leadership.
Okay.
I like what John Maxwell says. Leadership is influence.
Okay. So that is correct, that's why there's the overlap of that. Is your leader empowers the team, coaches, develops, encourages, and that's part of what you do not only to the organization but to the community. That's part of your role, is encouraging the community, supporting the community, building a team culture. The manager, or in this case the city administrator, has a title, and his job is to take the, so where it overlaps, the council sets the clear goals, solves the problems, adapts to change, communicates well, acts with integrity with the city administrator. That's the important piece of it, is that's the part where you actually get into some of the manager piece of it. And that's what we're doing tonight. Some of that is we're going to set some clear goals, we're going to communicate and make some decisions related to the budget. And then the manager, in turn, has those, implement strategies, manages resources, enforces policies, but then he also has to go inside of the bubble there and set the clear goals with staff and adapts to change, acts with integrity, resolves conflicts with staff. So that's why the two bubbles merge, in that there's certain aspects that are only for those responsibilities or those goals, and then in the middle is where you kind of overlap. So we hear micromanaging, and that can be at any level. Micromanaging can be at the top level. It can be a supervisor or a lead person can micromanage. And the reason that you don't want to, or you shouldn't need to micromanage, is if you have good, competent, and key employees, pay them well, trust their judgment, and recognize their authority and responsibilities. I always told my mayors when new ones came in, I said, if you don't trust me, if you feel like I'm doing a bad job, terminate me. I mean, that's what this profession is about. That's what my job is, and that's why I had a contract. That's why city managers and administrators have a contract, is because things can change, directions can change, and that's what you do. But when you start micromanaging, then that affects the whole organization. So stick to the policy making. Personal involvement day to day can really be left up to your staff and supervisors. Don't let other people bypass the system. Don't pass the buck. If employees are only following your policy, so you pass a policy and it ends up not working out the way you hoped it did, and there's some pushback, don't blame staff for that. That's the council's policy. Don't always take no for an answer. So I always did this with staff, and I think it's your role to do it with staff as well, is when you ask a question and if you hear no, there should be more to that. There should be a reason why it's no. We tried it before, it didn't work, or whatever. Or is there a way that we can do it? The struggle I always had was with code enforcement. They're very black and white. You either do it right or you do it wrong. And I always told my code enforcement officer, because I get complaints about, nope, can't do this, can't do that. So they, stop everything. And I said, what's going on? And I get a complaint, and they said, well, and he would say, if they would have done this, it would have been okay. I said, did you tell them that? No. And I said, so that's part of what that we have to do, is that not everything's black and white, or if it is, there may be a workaround. And so that's what the other issue when you say no is, you should be able to give a reason or an alternative. Because we want to work with that. Now, there may be times when there is a no, but most of the time there's some type of workaround. If you would do this, this would work. Or if you did this, you'd be allowed under the policies or whatever. So the warning signs of a micromanagement organization is your team has to wait for decisions, constantly ask for updates, you struggle to delegate, you do other people's work. So the steps to break free from micromanaging is focus on the outcomes, give constructive feedback. That's always important. Feedback's important, but if you can do it in a constructive way, allow flexibility, trust your team. That's important. Let people work in their way. So someone may have a way of doing something, and if you tell them we'll do it this way, I have that problem sometimes with my wife. We don't communicate the way we should, and she reads it one way, and I'm instructing a different way. So, but the consequences of micromanaging is your trust breaks down, morale decreases, productivity drops, team growth stalls, creativity dies. So micromanagement can be a very serious problem with an organization. So what ends up happening is you end up with a toxic workplace. And what you'll see in a toxic workplace is gossip, bullying, rampant absenteeism, apathy, excuses, pessimism, poor communication, those type of things. So if you start seeing that in your organization, you know you've got some problems that need to be addressed. So how do you fix it? You enhance communication, give employees flexibility, end favoritism, promote inclusivity, open leadership. So the signs of a positive culture: people still feel safe to speak up. Team members generally support each other. Mistakes are treated as learning experiences. Leaders walk the talk. The benefits are people actually enjoy coming to work. You get more done. Retention rates improve. Creativity flows. You become more attractive to talent. Problems are solved. So obviously, having a toxic work environment can cause major problems within the organization. So how do you build a positive work culture? You lead with integrity. So that starts with you all and moves down to the local government. One thing, or the staff. One thing that I thought was interesting is we, like you, Facebook Live our council meetings, and we could go and see who was watching. There's never a lot, 10 or 12 people. Majority of them were always staff members. So staff members were actually watching the council meetings. And so that's how you actually interact with them. You don't see them every day. You may never see them. But they're watching the council meetings and see how you treat each other, how you treat the staff that's here, and the policies that you adopt, how you talk about staff if they're not here. So those are things that I found was interesting, is that staff, and that's why I always told my council it was very important that you actually do play a lead role in your staff, even though you may never see them. They're watching. So normalize not knowing. It's okay to embrace uncertainty, especially if you got new new staff members, raise the bar together, learn from mistakes. I did a strategic plan with I think it was the city of Eudora, and one of their council members, and I talked about, what happens if council or if staff fails, and they said fail quickly. And I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, what I mean is it's okay to try things, because we always talk about think outside the box, do something different, not what we've always done. But when you do that, you can fail. And he said, I want to support thinking outside the box, and I understand that they may fail, but let's do it early on, not try to keep on something. If it's not working, at some point you got to say, no, we're moving on. This is not going to work. But do it early. Don't try to drag something on for months or years when everybody knows it's not going to work. So ethics is a big piece of what you as the governing body, what city staff has to follow. In your code book, you actually have a code of ethics in there. And I'm not going to read it all to you, but it talks about fair and equal treatment, use of public property, obligations to the citizens, conflicts of interest are in there, disclosure of confidential information, gifts, favors, those types of things. So those are all in your code book, and I encourage you to read those if you haven't yet. The code book also talks about meetings of the council. So your regular meetings are held the second and fourth Thursdays of each month at 7 p.m. And that's a state requirement, actually. There's a state statute that said every city must meet at least once a month, and more if business requires it. You actually meet twice a month. Bel Air met twice a month. The city shall not be required to meet on the fourth Thursday of any given month. So you can cancel a meeting by a vote of the council. Special meetings may be called by the mayor or acting mayor upon written request. So if you've had a special meeting, you know that process. Regular special meetings of the government may be adjourned for completion of business when the council decides it's time to adjourn. And in your situation, again in your codes, a quorum shall be a majority of the council members elect shall constitute a quorum. So in other words, it's not a quorum of who's there, it's a quorum of who was elected. So in your situation, it always have to be 3 to be a quorum. Now, if only if the mayor and 2 council members showed up, that the mayor doesn't count in a quorum, so you wouldn't have a quorum. You only have 2 council members. Kansas Open Meeting Act. I'm sure you've all heard about that, COMA. Talks about open meetings, applies to elected officials, your commissions like planning commission, if you had task forces or boards or whatever. Majority of the board rule when discussing city business, so there's where your quorum's important. No secret ballots, can't be passing notes, can't be texting each other, those types of things. Who gets notice? So the media, public posting, those are all, or by request, those are up to you. State statute says you have to, if it's on a regularly scheduled meeting in your code book, like yours first and the second, your meeting's the second and the fourth. You don't have to do anything special, everybody knows that. But typically councils will put out the agenda before the meeting, but you don't have to. But any kind of special meeting or workshop or anything like what we're doing tonight, you should let the public know. And then citizens can be, if they request, can be notified when they request what those meetings are. So in other words, a citizen could say, I want to be notified of all council meeting planning commission. They should come in and fill out a form. And then staff would actually have to contact them by email or phone and say there's a meeting, and then let them know when the meeting is and where. But that's done by official request. Recording devices are allowed at a council meeting. So anyone here with cell phones, all cell phones have a recorder now, so if anybody's sitting in the council chambers and wants to record, they can. And again, it employs to any COMA applies to any non-employee city group. So executive sessions, when you're in executive session, you can't take any action, you can't take any vote. You can invite outsiders to executive sessions. So you may need to invite your engineer if you're looking at buying some land for some drainage purposes. You may need to invite your engineer to talk through how much land you're going to need to buy. Again, substantive disclosure, that would be if you're buying some land, you don't want to, in the open meeting, discuss what you're going to give for it, what you're offering, and what you're willing to pay. So that's why that's done in executive session. Records are not usually made. I remember it's been probably 10 years ago, there was talk about recording executive sessions, and the Attorney General at that time said that you could, but there's issues with who maintains those records, why you maintain them, how long you maintain them, but you don't have to, and the recommendation was that you don't take your executive sessions. And then inaccurate length of session, that's always a big question that council members have is, so you say, we're going to go into executive session at 7 p.m. and we'll return at 7:30 p.m. The question is, can we, if we're done at 7:25, can we come out? And the answer is no. You said that you would come out at 7:30, so you have to stay in there. Now you can't talk about anything else. If you went into executive session for purchasing of some land, then you can't start talking about personnel and other things because you did not go in for that. So you have to stay. And then now if it's going to be over, usually if it's over 2 or 3 minutes, it's not an issue. If you're going to be 5 minutes or so, you need to come out and then go back in. So that way you let the citizens know that it's going to take more time and how much longer it's going to take. And the same thing with why you can't come out early is because someone could decide they're going to run over to Jumpstart and get a drink because they got a half an hour, and they come back 20 minutes later and you've already made your decision and left, and they didn't get to hear what that was. So that's why that's so important. And there are 38 exemptions. So the Kansas Open Record Act, you've heard of that, CORP. That's public records are open to the citizens. There are 38 different categories. I just listed a few. Personnel records is a big one. The other issue that we run into with Kansas Open Record Act, and that's why there's always a lot of discussion about emails and text, is do you have a city phone, or do you have a city email, or do you use your personal email? And really the consensus, I think, has always been that you have a city email that you can access, because what can happen, the same thing with text, you have to be careful about if you're going to use your personal phone for texting, and it's with staff as well. It's not just the governing body members, but if some type of case would come up and an attorney would ask to see all of your emails between you and the city administrator, so you have to go back and look for them. And then they come back and say, I want to see all your emails for the month of June. Well, if you're using your personal email account, you would have to, any emails you sent, that's what they asked for. Now, again, you may say, well, that's going to take me 5 hours and to print it off, and it's going to cost me $50. And if they want it, they can say, well, I'll pay for that. I want to see all your emails. So that's the concern about using private emails. And the same thing with text. If you're using your personal phone, I want to see all your text for this month. It doesn't happen very often, but the big issue is that it can. And it's just good to know that that's a possibility. So I talked about your codes. Here's your list. You've got on your website, you can go and look at all your city codes. They're right there. And so now we're going to talk about finance. We start talking about the budget. So you hear accounting, you hear finance, you hear accountants, you hear financial people, and there's a difference. Accounting focuses day to day on the flow of money, records transactions, financial information, specific times. Finance is about the focus on how money is managed and budgeting and borrowing and investing and things like that. So when you talk about, well, let's have an accountant look at something, okay, or let's have an accountant help us with, for example, the budget. Let's have an accountant to help us with the budget. So they're going to look at the numbers. Do the numbers all make sense? Where are the numbers coming from? Do they add up? All that kind of stuff. If you're looking for a financial person, like a city administrator or financial advisor, they're going to look at how the money's being managed. What are you spending it on? Or do you need to borrow anything? Do you need to invest some? Do you have a lot of reserves? Forecasting. Well, okay, if we do this year, what's going to happen next year? So they're going to look more at the bigger picture, long term. So part of your responsibilities of municipal financing is the annual operating budget. That's what you're working on now. Tax rates, you set the tax rates. You've got fees for licenses, rents. Those are all part of what you're going to set. Fines, you may set local fines. The state sets most of those fines. Special assessments, so if you have a new subdivision going on, you could special assess the infrastructure going in. You look over investments, so if you have reserves, how are the reserves? You need to invest those. And then borrowing, you have the ability to borrow. You can do temp notes, you can do GO bonds, leases, etc. So the pieces of a general fund are basically, or the pieces of your budget is the general fund, which that's supported by revenues such as property tax, sales tax, fines, fees, whatever. And usually it's broke down into revenues, expenditures, contractual services, and commodities. And that's what you'll see in the state budget form. Usually what is recommended by the Government Finance Officers Association is a 35% fund balance. 35% of your expenditures should be your fund balance. There is other talk about 6 months worth of expenditure should be your revenue balance or your fund balance. Enterprise funds, now those are your funds that bring in specific revenues from services such as your water, your sewer, your gas. Those are enterprise funds because they operate on fees that you assess. Then you have your capital equipment fund, which is your savings for purchases such as graders and dump trucks. It's a good way to, especially like the larger equipment, a grader may be $150,000. Sometimes you may budget for a truck that's $50,000 in your operating budget, but 150 is a little difficult, so you'll do borrow a lease purchase or borrow some money. Or you'll save up, just like your own savings account. You put $25,000 a year in for X amount of years to buy that grader. And then you have the capital improvement fund, which is the same thing, but it's for like if you want to build a new city hall or a new police station or public works facility. So again, it's a savings fund. So there's two timelines that you have to be conscientious about. So one is, depending on what you're going to do with the revenue neutral rate, and that's basically where you don't bring in or you don't assess more than what the previous year brought in property taxes. So if you're going to exceed the revenue neutral rate, then you have to let the county know that your intent is to exceed it, which you have to do that by July 20th, and then you have to set a public hearing. And the last day to publish the public hearing is September 10th, and the last day to hold the hearing is September 20th. And then on October 1st, the county sets the mill rate. If you're just doing the budget, you're not going to expand the revenue neutral rate. It's the same timeline, only you don't have to hold a special hearing or pass a resolution or ordinance for that. So again, last day, you still have to hold a public hearing for your budget, You have to publish it, those types of things. But this is basically the same schedule. And if you're exceeding the revenue neutral rate and passing your budget, you'll have 2 separate hearings. You'll have 2 separate adoptions and those types of things. So when we talk about property taxes, you hear about the tax levy, you hear about the tax rate, and the tax roll. They're all different, but each entity has a say in that. So you assess the tax levy. So you determine what kind of expenses you're going to have, what kind of revenue you need, and so you're going to create a tax levy. Then you're going to give that to the county clerk, and the county clerk will then create the tax roll and put it in the mills. And then the county treasurer creates the tax roll, so sends out the bills for the taxes. So that's how the county is involved, but you actually set the tax levy. So assessed value evaluation, we've heard a lot about that. That's why budgets have been increasing, because assessed value has been going up on houses because of the housing market. But it has to be at fair market value. Fair market value is where well-informed buyer and well-informed seller would pay, but property owners have the right to appeal. So the only reason that that's important for you is that citizens are going to come in and say, my taxes went up and it's your fault. And you say, well, no, we kept the mill levy the same, but the assessed value went up, and that's something that the county appraiser's office does. So if you feel that's not fair, you can certainly appeal that and try to get that down. So we talk about borrowing. There's 2 different types of borrowing. You can do general obligation. You've heard of that, GO bonds. And the reason cities can get a very good rate, I think it's around 4 to 5% borrowing, which is much less than what you or I would get. But it's because general obligation is backed by the full faith and credit of the municipality. So in other words, what you're saying to bondholders is that if we don't have enough money to pay you, we will raise the tax rate and we will get that money for you. So that's why it's such a good interest rate, because it's a very solid investment. And then you have revenue bonds, which revenue bonds are the revenues brought in by fees, payments from your enterprise fund. So in other words, it's very similar to GO bond, only you're saying that we will raise rates. So we're going to borrow a revenue bond to do some water improvements. We'll raise rates if we have to. Not going to raise taxes, but we'll raise rates. So again, it's going to be it's probably a 5%, where GO bonds at 4%. So there's a little bit more, because bondholders feel like, well, that's tough to raise rates. But so we're going to get into some of the questions I asked. So I asked, how's the city doing financially? And so this is from the city council, those of you that responded. City reserves are declining, less public faith in the financial stability, incomplete information. I think the city's in a stable financial position overall. We need to ensure we are making timely investments, not really certain. It's not completely clear regarding city finances. So these are all questions, or these are answers that came from you. And these are the importance of these are so that if there are issues or concerns you have, staff can review those and assist in getting answers for those. So then I asked the staff, I said, well, how do you think the city's doing financially? And they said, well, it operates its own gas utility, which is always good. Has a 1% sales tax that supports the general fund. That's good. Maintain a good, strong bond rating due to financial stability. So that's good. So then now we're going to talk about roles and responsibilities of elected officials, you all, what your roles and duties are. So when we talk about meetings, it's important to attend meetings. And the reason it's important is that sometimes council has some difficult decisions you have to make. And if someone doesn't come, they're kind of putting that difficulty on everyone else. So that's not fair. That's why you have the representatives that you do. It's important to review. Staff puts out or should be putting out packets prior to the meetings. May have to attend a special meeting or a workshop like tonight. You may have to attend K254 Corridor Association, Chamber of Commerce, WAMPO. You may have to attend those or be appointed to those as a representative. I've always heard, well, what's my budget? Well, you don't have a budget as an individual. You have a budget as a group. So you have about 10.7 million as your budget, and it takes 3 members to approve spending anything out of there. But the city will pay for mileage, etc., registration, those types of things. So what's your responsibilities? You review approved annual budget. You establish long and short-term objectives, priorities. You establish the tax rate. We talked about that. You enter into legal contracts. You borrow money. You pass ordinances and resolutions. You regulate land use through planning and zoning. Regulate business activity through licenses. Respond to constituents' needs and complaints, etc. So what are the powers that the council have? This is in your code book. This specifically outlines what your powers are. So the governing body may designate whether administration policy is carried out by a committee, appointed officer, or the mayor. So the council gets to decide who's going to carry out different policies and such. If you have a vacancy on the council, someone resigns, specifically talks about how that's taken care of. Compensation, you actually get compensated, and it's fixed by resolution. So, which is kind of interesting. You get to set your own salary. Kind of nice, or maybe it's not nice. It's tough. Expenses. So again, we talked about that earlier. If you have expenses in your duties, the city can reimburse you for those, mileage, etc. State statute actually addresses what city council responsibilities are. Act as a policy making body. Got to meet at least once a month. I mentioned that. Council only has the power in the meeting. So when you are gavelled in by the mayor, you have the power to do create policies or whatever for the city. But when you're at the grocery store or at Jumpstart, you don't get to decide anything because you're just one citizen at that point. You're the community liaison. So you want to be involved with other leaders. You want to contribute to strong community ties, communicate accurate information. You want to stop rumors, hear complaints, work with state, federal, county. You want to make sure you have a good relationship with all of the other government entities. You're a legislature. You adopt policies. You adopt laws for citizens of Kechi. And a policymaker. And that's as I said, that's not easy. Some of the steps that are important that you need to think through when you're making policy is it supported? Is there support for staff, citizens? Why are you making a policy or a law on something? If no one supports it, why are you doing that? Maybe you don't need to be doing that. Is it fair and equitable? You got good analysis. You understand the impacts and the goals. We always talk about unintended consequences. A lot of times there's those. Just think through that. Is it relevant to the community? So in other words, you decide to pass a bed tax. We don't have any hotels. Is that really a good use of time? Maybe it is, but maybe it's not if you don't have any of these hotels. Can it be implemented? Good chance of working. Again, you do a bed tax, that's not going to work because you have no hotels. And then are the results monitored? Could there be unintended consequences? So we're going to talk about the rules of the mayor. State statute says the mayor is the chief administrative officer, sign all ordinances, resolutions. The mayor can veto. However, council can override a veto with a 2/3 majority vote. So it would take 4 council members to override the mayor. Mayor shall sign all contacts. The mayor represents the governing body. Mayor shall be responsible for administration of all affairs and enforce laws and ordinances. The mayor shall appoint heads of the departments with approval of the city council. And then department heads make regular reports to the mayor and the council. So you should be receiving reports from departments. As far as your city codes, this talks about, again, what the mayor presides at all the meetings, takes care of ordinances, very similar to what state statute has. President of the council, who's your council president? Mr. President. So the council president's elected by the governing body, and in the absence of the mayor, the president of the council acts as the mayor in place of the mayor. Has the same privileges as all their council members, but no veto vote. So that's interesting, is the council president, if the mayor's gone, can run the meeting and vote. So one of my questions was, how do you work together as a governing bodies? These are your answers. Much work needs to be done. Information not shared consistently. Collaboration as a governing body doesn't always work, since there is a divide. So I assume there's a division. Sometimes that happens. I'm willing to listen. Let's talk about it. Argumentative, lack of emotional maturity. So it sounds like there's a division. There's some issues between council members, the mayor, and the thing that jumped out was that let's talk about it, and I'm willing to listen. Those are important. If you're willing to work through those, you can usually get through them. So I think that's important, and that's good. And I don't want to advertise, but those are things that I've helped with, is governing bodies working together. I did one with Saline County. They wanted me to come in and do some local government training, and specifically have the commissioners work together. And so we did some of that. Talked about how each person communicates and those types of things. So then I asked staff, how's the relationship between staff and the governing body as a whole? Good. There's just rocky with the mayor. For the most part, good. Sometimes the governing body will step on operational issues. That's where we talk about micromanaging. Sometimes the dysfunction can take away time from business. So again, we talk about, that's why I covered some of those things at the beginning, that's why those are important, is the organization. And you create those. Again, like I said, you're creating that culture for the organization just by how you react as a council. So then I asked the council, what keeps you up at night? Ensuring the city maintains positive professional public image. Difference in leadership approach can create challenges. Ethics concerns, appropriate decision makers in the room to make decisions and give input. That's a good one on decision making. Other people there. Lack of accountability, what's Kechi's true financial health, lack of conversation. So again, these are some organizational things that keep you up at night. So what are the roles and responsibilities of city staff? So the city administrator, again, in your city codes, talks about what your city administrator is responsible for. And really, it's administration of all affairs of the city. Make sure that the laws of the state and ordinances are being complied with, supervise and coordinate all departments, services. Designate director level department heads, recommend to the mayor and governing body suitable persons to be hired or appointed as city clerk, city treasurer, city attorney, judge, and chief of police. Be a direct and immediate supervisor for all department heads. The mayors typically have full-time jobs or other responsibilities, and they're not here all day, so that's why you have a city administrator. Again, this is from your codes. Examines the affairs of the departments, submit the annual budget. That's what we're starting to work on. Establish pay for officers and employees. And you can read all those. I don't want to go through them all. And again, here's additional codes for the city administrator. City administrator, we talked about an employment agreement. The salary is fixed by the city council and benefits. So the city clerk, what's the city clerk's role? Be custodian of all records and books and papers, carry on official correspondence, maintain ordinances, publish ordinances, etc. Fiscal records, prepare, keep suitable fiscal records, assist in preparing the annual budget, keeping record accountable bonds. City clerk, it handles the oaths, so oaths of office. So you all took one of those, staff takes them as well. Deputy city clerk fills in when the city clerk is not there. And deputy city clerk is also the treasurer. And there, again, the city codes outline what the treasurer's responsibilities are. You have a police department. Again, in your city codes, it talks about that the chief of police and law enforcement officers are appointed to enforce the laws of the state and of the city. You have a city prosecutor that you also appoint, and they represent the city in municipal court and fines and things like that. You have a city engineer that you appoint. State statute, the reason you appoint these is state statute says that municipalities must have an appointed prosecutor and city engineer. And most of the time for smaller communities, it's a engineering firm. Most cities don't, or smaller cities don't have a full-time engineer. You have a city attorney that you appoint, and again, those are all the in your code, all the responsibilities. I've known Andrew for a long time. I like him. He's a good attorney. Then, of course, you have your public works. You got water, sewer, gas, stormwater, streets. Those are their responsibilities. So we talked about city staff. And I mentioned earlier the importance of educated and experienced. So you have two department heads that have bachelors. You have one with an AA and one with a tech school degree. You have another one with some college, and you have one with a high school diploma. So you have some educated department heads. Your experience ranged from 17 years to 3 years. So on average, 6 years with the city. So I asked the staff, what do you like about your job? They provide essential services, that you have a flexible schedule, working with the public, co-workers, and supporting each other. That's good. That says that there's a good basis for a good work environment. How's your department doing delivering services? Doing well, overall well, okay. So they feel that they're doing okay with delivering services. Then I asked staff, what keeps you up at night? Obviously, your public works director said if everything's taken care of that's required during the day for utilities, and he doesn't get a call, an emergency call in the middle of the night, then that allows him to sleep. City council meetings and knowing what will happen. We talked about earlier the importance of a little praise goes a long way. Friction between the governing body, meeting timelines with limited staff. So again, we're seeing some of that, the division, and it's affecting your culture. Questions or comments? How are we doing on time?
Good. A little after
We're 7? Okay. Well, let's take a little break, maybe a 5-minute break, and then we're going to get into some budgeting, and you're going to complete some surveys and some things like that. So let's take a quick break, and we'll get set up. got maps. I think. Okay, are we ready to go, Mayor?
Absolutely, go right ahead.
Okay.
Apologize for the delay.
All right, that's no problem. So it was good to get up and stretch a little bit. We're going to talk about strategic planning and how that relates to the budget. Matt's passing out some information. Nothing, you don't need to fill anything out yet. There'll be time for you to do that. And then we'll gather that. Staff's going to work on putting that stuff together so you can actually see tonight what happens. So strategic plan is a plan that serves your community's roadmap, prioritizes incentives, initiatives, resources, goals, department operations. That's what a strategic plan is, and that's what a budget does. So what we've got, like I said, we passed out some surveys, and you all, or there's several of you returned some surveys. So as you've already seen, I asked staff what their feelings were, because sometimes what you see is that the elected officials, you as a governing body, see the external things, the things that you can see, the park, playground equipment, the roads, that kind of stuff. But a lot of what you do is in delivering services is your gas lines, which are underground, and your sewer and wastewater are all underground. No one sees those, but sometimes staff really gets concerned about if those aren't being taken care of properly, because because then they can't sleep at night because they're afraid of water main breaks and things like that. So that's why I asked staff is they're out there day to day, serving the citizens. Is there something that they see that maybe you didn't catch? So I asked the staff, what's going well within your department? The employees get along well. Your employees are picking up what they need to be doing, willing to do what's needed. Coworkers support each other. They're doing a good job with less. Everybody seems to be needing to cut or looking at cutting. What do you like about your job? Provide essential services for residents, flexible schedule, working with the public and their coworkers. So, and I apologize, this is a little bit small to read, but I think you're still going to get copies of this at the end of the meeting, so you can take these home and read these. But then I asked, what challenges does the organization face? Again, this was staff that I asked. With the projected added growth, there's going to be a lot of tough decisions that need to be made. Where in the budget do these potential upgrades come from? Finding people who want to work for city government. We always talk about staff and council or work in a fishbowl. You're never off. You're always, no matter where you're at, you're always going to get questioned about city stuff. Feels like planning commission or certain council don't want growth. That's always an issue with any community, especially smaller communities. There's some that like the way it is. They like the small community. They want to stay that way. There's others that want growth. They want more restaurants and things like that. So you're going to see that within a community. Not pleasing the public. So they're concerned that they don't please the public. Mayor comments on Facebook. Kechi needs to look at expanding facilities, public works, police buildings, they're running out of room. What challenges does your department face? Future growth of the city, finding qualified individuals, again, who wants to work for cities, training new and existing employees, new codes and regulations. Federal, state are always making changes to requirements for water and gas and sewer. There's that new water mandate out with lead and copper that everybody's got to comply with, and there's a cost that they forgot to fund. So it's on the cities now. No coverage when gone, so that happens when you minimize your staff. If someone leaves, you have no one to cover for when they're gone. Politics. Kechi needs to expand utilities. So then I asked the council, how do you think the city's doing delivering services? Public Works does a great job. Customer service within City Hall is diminished since offices have moved. effectively delivering essential services, doing fairly well. Customer service should be the number one priority. What does the city do well? Those were the questions that I asked you, and here are your answers. Public Works does well, keep the roads maintained, public grounds. Been complaints from residents about customer service or communication, making necessary upgrades to sign outside City Hall, moving forward with Huffman Drive. Police keeps our city safe, and whoever responded likes the outreach, the fishing derby, and things like that, and managing growth. So then I asked, what can the city be doing better? And again, this is your comments. Provide a clear, transparent information, especially financial, following policies and procedures equitably, utilizing RFPs and consistent bidding, always room for improvement. PD should increase control, focus on community policing. Governing body needs to work through differences in social media. Most everything is working well, thanks to ministry department heads. Again, these were your comments, not mine. I'm just relaying. I also asked, if you remember, is quality of life important? The overwhelming, everybody I think said yes. And how should the city be involved? Decision-making, key decision-making, support and enhance quality of life by maintaining essential services like parks and infrastructure. And what is quality of life? Because we hear a lot about quality of life, but what does it mean? Quality of life means the degree to which an individual is healthy, comfortable, and able to participate or enjoy life. So I asked, what are major issues facing the city in the next 2 years? I always like to do my strategic planning over 2 years. And the reason I've seen them 5 and 10 years, and I saw numerous 5 and 10 year ones just sitting on my shelf. Never looked at it, because council member, you have an election every 2 years. And oftentimes you have at least one new council member. Rarely do you not have any change, but you have some type of change. And then all of a sudden, your the vision that you had in that 10-year strategic plan is gone because you have 2 new council members and things change. So that's what I said. What's in the next 2 years? In other words, what's your until the next election? What do you see? And this is. I also asked staff, what do you see the major issues facing? So this is a combination of you and staff. Planning for utility infrastructure, being proactive in planning, K254 corridor development, completing the current phase of the park plan with play equipment upgrades, managing growth, both residential and commercial, infrastructure capacity. With growth, you need to make sure that your infrastructure can handle that increased growth and needs. Financial planning and investment, finding the right balance between fiscal responsibility and investment. Governance and maintaining alignment, consistency, and leadership. Community confidence, engagement. Political division and uncertainty can affect the residents. That's true. It can also affect businesses. There was probably more than once, but one that I can remember, I had a council that was very divided, and I had businesses that I was trying to promote come to Bel Air, and they were concerned about the council. And they said, as long as we can work with you and we can trust you, we'll do it, but we're not sure we can trust the council because of division. So it's real, and businesses look at that as well, because everything's on social media now. They can go watch a council meeting and see how you react. Do you need to make serious consideration of building a water treatment plant? Well-defined CIP, politics again, governing body, lack of growth, finding qualified staff. That's a big one anymore, not just in local government, but any businesses. So then I asked again, this is combined, what should the council priorities be for the next 2 years? In improving public trust, fiscal responsibility, update the CIP, strategic plan phase 2, Kechi Road and Oliver phase 2, Improving governance, that's why we talked a little bit about what governance actually means. Community engagement. Again, that capacity for infrastructure. Next phase of the arts and business district. How to fund utility upgrades, that's always a big one. Growth, supporting staff, goals and vision for staff. Again, that's what you're doing with this strategic plan, is giving your staff a direction, what you want accomplished. So what are the main concerns that you have for the 2027 budget? Been no preliminary information. That's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to work on setting some of those goals and giving staff some direction on what you want to see. You'd like to see a budget worksheet with details on line items, comparisons to the last 3 years. The state budget form does a little bit of that, but it doesn't get down to the line items. As development increases, as you grow, can the budget expand those, or can the budget support those expanded services? Water sewer master plan, broken into stages. CI discussion, we're going to discuss that. CIP discussion, we're going to do that tonight. Lack of public trust. You're seeing some similarities here in some of these comments that I'm getting. No budget retreat for 2027, that's what we're doing tonight. Okay, so we're going to take a survey. So on your desk is a budget priority. You look at the top left, it's going to say budget priorities for 2027. So let me see here. Okay, so what you're going to do is, and there's room on the back, if something on here is not, if there's something you want to add that's not on here, you can write it on the back. But if something's going to be included, so if you write something on the back, there's got to be at least 3 of you that agree that that's a priority. So if one of you just writes one thing, that's not going to be included. It needs to be something that at least 3 of you are tracking on. So only items with 3 or more votes. So what you'll do is you'll just check mark what you think should be a budget priority for 2027. And then once you get done, they're going to tally it, we'll write it on the board and just see if you agree with that. And the things that are on there are items that I received from your comments and staff comments. So those are not things that I made up.
So no changes to police department funding or list percent up or down?
Yeah, so if you think that no changes, then check mark that. But if you think it needs to be increased or decreased, then just make a note that says it needs to be increased by 5% or 10% or decreased by 10% or whatever you think. Same thing with the mill, that's the last one. You think it should be flat, then check that you think it should be flat, but if you think it should go up or down, write on there if you think it should go up by however many mills or down by however many mills. And this is just a workshop, so you're not going to be held responsible for any of your answers. All it's doing is giving staff some suggestions on what you want to see in the budget. For example, if they have some ideas of some capital equipment or capital outlay funds, and it's going to increase the budget by 2 mils, and there's no support to increase the budget, then probably not a good idea to bring that to you. A several mil increase is not something that you're interested in seeing. Okay, if you're done, Krista can pick those up.
Just one page. Great, thank you.
Okay, so while they're going to tally that, and then we're going to write it up here, and we're going to look and see what you all individually thought, how that came together, and then make sure that everybody agrees with that. So in the meantime, we're going to have a little fun. I'm going to do some slideshows. So one thing that I really enjoyed about being a public servant was one of the things that I was invited to be a honorary commander at McConnell Air Force Base, and that was fun because they do that. It's like a 1-year stint, and they have things going on every month that you get to go and experience on Air Force Base, which is really neat. The most fun was they took us up in a tanker and we flew down over Oklahoma and refueled some planes over Oklahoma. So we were able to get in the back boom area and watch. You could wave at the pilot and that type of stuff. So that's something that most people would never get to do if it wasn't for being in public service and working with other government agencies. The other thing that was fun is that in Kechi, they bought that new fire truck there, and of course they were all excited. Firemen liked their equipment, and they brought it home and they said, "Come on, take a ride." So of course I got a ride in the new fire truck, and then next thing I know, they're stopping and saying, "You drive it." So I actually got to drive a fire truck, which again is fun. And then of course every time the police would get a new car, I'd take that for a ride. Equipment that they would get. Staff really, it's funny that staff really gets appreciative when they get new equipment because it makes their life easier. They don't have to repair things, something that they may have needed, and they're happy to share. That's a joy that they have, and so I get to go share in that, and that's fun as working for the public that a lot of people don't get. And then of course got to meet several different people. Met the mayor and toured the highway patrol facility right up here that's in your town, and met with different elected officials, which was fun and unique. They sometimes have a different perspective on things. Okay, so we'll go through the result. One of the interesting things that the congressman there, if you remember, I'm going to talk a little bit about Integra. You remember hearing about Integra, and so that's during one of our recesses when they're tallying and writing stuff. Well, I'll explain some Integra stuff to you. But what was interesting is that it was going to take millions of dollars to upgrade all of the infrastructure to serve the Integra needs. They were going to need 1 million gallons of water a day is what they were going to need. And so there was a lot of infrastructure that was going to need to be added. And, you know, we had known, or you hear that there's a lot of bills that are passed that have money in them for projects. You just hear about that and it happens. So that was when Integra announced that they were coming to Bel Air, and Congressman Marshall showed up, and of course, when things like that happen, they all want to show up and get some publicity. It's good for their district and such. And he had said that I said, you know, we need some money. You know, can you get us something in a bill? And he said, well, the Republican caucus, they just don't like those earmarks. And he said, but there's billions of dollars in grant funding out there that you can go after. The problem is, which you and both small cities have, is how do you wade through those hundreds of grant applications and then spend time applying for those. And that was one of the difficulties, that struggle that we had in that instance, was that we couldn't get an earmark because we were going to need $20-30 million, but we didn't have the staff. And you know, again, you're competing against places like Detroit and Atlanta, you know, and how does Bel Air, Kansas compete against those? And what happens too often is at the federal level, it's all politics. So and that's, I can tell you, I'll tell you a little bit about the infrastructure and the stuff and how we got them. But the reason they didn't come or couldn't come is because they had to have that CHIPS grant in order to do the expansion. They had to have it. They couldn't have done it without it. And so they did everything right, because I was working with them pretty closely, and they did everything they had to do. Flew to Washington monthly, met with different folks. And you remember, this was under Biden. And so when they started granting those funds, the funds or those grants started going to Democratic states and did not have the same, well, they had different requirements than what Integra had. So in other words, Integra met every possible requirement of the bill and the grant, but the ones that were getting it didn't meet half of them. For example, one had to be owned by a U.S. company, and Integra is. I mean, it's employee owned. And then one of the companies that got it, their parent company was Panasonic or something, who's owned overseas, but they got it, and it was a Democratic state. I think it was in Washington, maybe. But anyway, that's the sad thing, and that's really what ended up why they didn't come, is because they had to have the money. They didn't get the grants. It was a great project, but politics got in the way, and that's one thing that is important about local government, is that people can see us and talk to us, and so oftentimes you don't let politics get in the way. You do what's best for your citizens. So.
You want one, they're making all kinds of notes on them.
No, I just want to know if there's
Okay.
three or not. Yep. Because the notes, we'll keep those, and in the end, I'll do a report for you that will include notes and those types of things, and suggestions and things. So tonight, I just wanted to show you where, and staff will get to see, comments of what you're looking for, especially if some of you said, well, we need to do a budget decrease by, somebody said 5%, maybe 10%. We, staff can see those and figure out, okay, where's it, the bigger piece is going to be that maybe there needs to be one, or if somebody said, well, we need to increase the mill, then we'll figure out how much that is. But Okay, while they're working on that, let's just jump ahead. Okay, so let's vote on, or let's work on budget cuts if needed. So if we see on what the results are that there should be a budget decrease, got to figure out where it's going to come from, where you're going to cut. So what I did was I made a list of where you and staff thought that maybe cuts could be taken. So again, you're going to look for the title.
No changes to
that
the CD.
says
Two of those to go down. I don't need that numbers.
what does it say? Proposed.
3, no changes to public
Yeah,
works.
proposed budget cuts if needed. So again, if needed. So Mark, if you think that, so again, it has to have at least 3 of you have to agree
So
if
just
there's something that
parks,
needs to be
community spaces
cut.
To enhance quality of
Not
life.
going to get into details about if it's staffing, how much staff, or anything like that. It's just whether that's an idea. Again, spending, those types of things. But these are all comments that I received from you all. I didn't make any of those up.
Street improvements. Include funding for sewer.
Okay, everybody got theirs? Check mark? Okay.
Include for water. Funding for water. Include for stormwater. And the levy flat, and then stepping down. And it was both. Flat or lift or up or down.
No, that's not.
Which is pretty much the same as PD. Or up or down. Public works up or down. And the same with administrative. Oh, nope, it didn't count. It only had 2 people. You can see my scribble.
Okay. Oh, Matt, are you still working? Okay. All right, so we've got it written down on the sheet over here. So again, you had to have 3 or more to be on the list. So these are budget priorities for 2027, the budget you're working on. Update the CIP. That received 3 votes. And you'll actually see that I have some questions for you about the CIP. So that's good. That'll be on there. No changes to the police department funding. That received 4.
Or up and down. I mean, some of them voted to decrease.
Oh, okay. So we'll have to, let's see, we got 1, a couple decrease, 1 increase. So we'll have to look up, kind of look at what the percentages are and things like that. But let's see here. 3, public works funding. There was some up and down there. Let's see. Funding for parks. That received 4. So there's no up or down, but that was a project that needs to be included in the budget. Include funding for street improvements. That received 4. include funding for sewer improvements. That includes, that was actually everybody. And then funding for water improvements. Mill levy, that's the big question. Flat. Looks like the majority were flat. Some looked at, wanted to look at going down or staying at the revenue neutral rate. So anyway, that helps staff with what, and again, they'll see your comments and stuff. So when they're putting the budget together, those will be incorporated and you'll have more time. Anybody disagree with this list? Or
Well, I guess I feel like, and I'm the one who asked for the budget to be presented on a line item basis.
Mhm.
To me, that's different than what are we considering putting in the budget. That is more about how are we being transparent about presenting the budget.
Mhm.
So that I do feel like that is different than are we going up or down on the budget item.
That's fine. Yep.
And also the, when we are looking at planning, are we looking at what we have had staff-wise and benefits and payments or payroll? Are we looking comparatively? I feel like those two items were not necessarily in the same genre as what the others are, but that's just my personal opinion. But that's going towards the transparency and understanding why we are moving and what is the historic 3 years, especially when you're asking about lowering staff. We're happy. Do we have the information that we need to make those? And I do feel like at this point, we may not necessarily have the information that we need to answer these.
And that's a valid point because you haven't seen the budget yet. And so what we're trying to do is give staff a little basis of what you would like to see, and so that they could put that together, and then you can look at it then. And again, those comments were in some of the comments. I don't know that I specifically read them, but there's some of the comments that were in the PowerPoint. So staff will see those about looking at past 3 years, looking at staff and benefits. I don't know that I've ever seen insurance rates go down. So it's like, well, what have we been paying? What's the employees pay? How much is it going up? Those types of things are important because personnel is a big part of your budget because you're providing services. So that's a lot of it.
Yeah, I would have to say that I really struggled with this because we've not had much information at all. I'm someone who's been pushing to get more information on water and sewer. What are those costs? We don't have any idea really what we're looking at CIP. We are waiting to hear a report with USDI. What's the possibility for our gas company? So I feel like a little bit like the cart's before the horse at this point. And so I even put on my sheet, I need additional information because it's very hard to make decisions when you don't have information and you're just trying to guess from the past where we should look and the environment of where our city's at right now, with utility infrastructure capacity. So I just feel like it's very difficult to be answering some of this when we don't have anything in front of us to know what we're looking at.
Yeah, and from your standpoint, I could see that. But what we're looking at is the reason that you're getting these questions is for the staff because they need to know what kind of information you want. I mean, they could spend days getting all kinds of information, print every report that your software will do, and then you'll get it all, and you'll get 100 pages, and you're like, what is all this? Why do I need, I don't care about this, I don't need that. So what do you specifically want? And those are the comments that are in there. And again, staff, this is really a lot for staff. What kind of reports do you want? Those are the things that they need to see and can work on. So yes, from your standpoint, it is, and saying, well, where do we cut? Well, again, and that's for the staff, because if they need to know if you're looking at the budget needs to stay flat or decrease, then their next question when they prepare something for you, if they're gonna prepare a budget that has a decrease in it, they're gonna know where to cut. And from them, it's not worth spending a lot of time saying, well, here's where we're gonna cut. And then they give it to you and you say, well, wait, you're not cutting that. You gotta cut somewhere else.
And I think from a decision maker standpoint, if I don't know what is being spent where already.
Correct.
And I have asked for these reports, and if I don't know where it's already being spent or what it's already budgeted necessarily, I can't make those decisions either, so I cannot really tell them this is maybe the direction to go if I don't have a good picture of what is already happening.
Yeah, and
But
again, I understand that from your view,
So,
because you used to, that's what you did, and so you're used to seeing a lot more details than what a council sees. And again, council's priority makers, and you're going to want to see a lot of that, and maybe council does too. Again, that's why I'm asking the questions is, does everybody want to see all that information? And what kind of information do you want to see? So that will help you with the budget. But honestly, like I said, it is, from your standpoint, it may seem a little cart before the horse, but this is what they need to get you a budget that really you can already have had some input in.
I thought it was great seeing that all of us were on the same page of realizing that the sewer is a priority.
Mhm.
And yes, we don't know what the solution is yet, but we know we need to be focusing on that and setting up our budget to support that. And also that most everybody thought that the streets are definitely important. We just went through kind of a 10-year recovery of getting our streets back up to where they needed to be because they had been neglected.
Yeah.
And I think we all, or most of us, want to keep that from happening again.
Yeah. So do your best. And like I said, keep in mind that you're not going to be held responsible for anything you give tonight. It's just a direction for the staff. And again, I'll do a report that lists all these things so that you'll have a written report. So if you have a question, if you don't get something that's in there, you could ask and say, well, I thought we wanted this and it's not, we didn't get it. Staff also knows that we didn't consider this because it wasn't a priority that the council determined was a priority. That's one thing that sometimes staff has difficulty with is if a council member comes in and says, I want this done, and that's only one council member, staff's got to go with the majority, whatever the majority wants. So anyway, so we got proposed. So this was, again, I know that, if you have to cut, where would you be willing to cut? The CIP was no new police cars in 2027. Those are always an issue. When do you replace cars?
I have a question about that. With the wreck, were we not replacing anything until 28?
I believe we were just doing one car yearly, rolling out the older cars in our fleets. So right now we got a car that we're pushing 100,000.
Okay, so there wasn't one in 27. Okay. I couldn't remember with the wreck if
You got 2 last year.
Thanks to the deer.
Normally we don't plan a wreck into our budget.
Yep, that always throws a wrench into it. There were 3 that said maybe look at administrative spending if you have to cut. And those were the 2 majority that everybody said to look at. Okay, so we did that. Went through results. Okay, so we're going to talk about capital improvement. Just mention that. So here's your current capital improvement program. You can see it was from 24 to 28. And you'll see what was accomplished in progress, and these are the other things that were listed on there.
She was confused because she has lots of
Oh,
tally.
you have a tally sheet?
She has
Okay.
a tally sheet instead of original.
Oh, so somebody else.
Okay.
Thank you, this as well.
I just knew you had one. You get to look at more
I
times.
was like, that's just kind of odd.
That is. It is.
This is the thing I've got left on charger.
We'll have two left.
Anybody? Just one person? You got one?
I did not get one.
Okay, you can get one.
Thank you.
She looks a lot different than mine.
Yeah, they look different,
I'm
doesn't it?
like so confused.
Uh-huh.
She, I think she
You
had
get
the
it?
right one.
Okay. Okay, so, so what I did was, for the I looked at, because that was one of the questions or comments about updating the capital improvement plan. It was a 5-year plan. So if you did a 2026, starting this year through 2031, these were the things that were listed on your capital improvement program that ends in 2028. And then also, you remember that there were some questions on what type of capital improvement plans did you think might be needed? I asked you and staff as well. So what you're seeing on this list is a combination of what you had and the new things that you and staff told me about. So again, what you're going to do is you're just going to check the things that you agree that should be in the capital improvement plan. Takes 3 or more of you to have it included. And if you think something's not on here, it needs to be added, write it down. And if there's 3 of you that agree, then that will add that.
Matt, do you know, we got the UTV in 2025, didn't we? The new Kubota?
No.
No?
We did not. No. He never replaced that.
That was fairly new.
No, I don't think so. I think we've had it for several years.
Huh.
I can double check
Should
though.
be 20, okay. I don't know why I thought that was new. They're newer.
I don't think.
Okay, so again, what I did was, or actually, yeah, so these were the, okay, so those were the priorities that I took out of your budget cycle that were included in there. So again, I didn't make any of those up. Those are things that were on yours or was there before. So. Okay, so a little bit about Bel Air. So I started in '07 and retired in 2023. Some of you may remember seeing some of this. So when I took over, Bel Air had owned 2,000 acres and owed about $20 million in debt. Remember, that's '07. And so there was the city limits of Bel Air. Here's what it looked like back in '08. You were around in '08, you're going to remember we drove up Rock or Oliver. In 2012, from Webb Road and 53rd, you can see the only thing that was there was the water tower. Not much housing. Central Park wasn't really going.
Where did the debt come from, the $20 million?
For purchasing 2,000 acres of land.
Okay. So
So
they went into debt to purchase it.
Yep. Then we created the Sunflower Commerce Park. You all drive by that. Now if you come up Webb and see all the new development that's in there. A lot of new developments happening there. So, let me see here. Okay, so Integra. So you remember that was just on the south side of 254 at Rock. When the Planning Commission was looking at rezoning this area, we had some residents from Kechi come and oppose that because of it was the people that lived in that neighborhood there with the larger lots.
Oh, the Heritage Hills.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. And so they, and they're allowed to do that. They're not in the city limits, but they're within the area of influence. But it did get approved. What they were looking at, phase one, was 1 million square foot building, 2,000 plus employees, a $2 billion investment. And again, that's why I said they had to have that CHIPS funding. They had to have at least 110 acres, which that's what they had. There was, that was a quarter section, so that's 160 acres. They needed 1 million gallons a day of water. And then their sewer was almost at, I think it was like 800,000 a day or something. So that was big. They did get the funding from the state of Kansas. They required local funding. If they got the state grant or the federal grant, it's going to be 2 years. They want to be up and running. So we had to get all of that infrastructure in 2 years is what they wanted. So what we looked at is how do we get them the water? Bel Air could provide them water, but they wanted another source. So Wichita had a water line at 45th and let's see, that's Webb and Rock. Off of between Webb and Rock, and so they could provide a second source. And actually, the city of Bel Air and the city of Wichita were working closely together on this because it came down to two parcels. One was at the airport, which is in the city of Wichita, and we were working with them to have a second source for them. Bel Air would provide a second source, or they were looking at Bel Air and Wichita was looking. So we were working together because we knew that this type of project would benefit the whole county, the whole state. So we were working together on it, and it just was up to them where they decided to go. And again, sewer, same thing. They needed two sources. So we had a sewer main running along 53rd. Wichita had a sewer main at 37th and Rock that they could expand up so we could get them two sources of sewer. So these were the incentives, that package that we had to put together to get them. So we were looking at an assessed value of the building of about $100 million. Now, some people would think, okay, well, it's a $2 billion investment. Why well, you have to remember that the assessed value is based on the usage. And because of what they were doing there, it wasn't your typical warehouse that anybody would buy. I mean, there was so much anti-static and stuff that was going into it that it was a specialized building. So it didn't have a huge assessed value because of that. Because on the market, it wouldn't bring a lot of money. So we looked at, we would get a building permit fee of about $1 million. We were going to issue an IRB for 10 years, so this 100%. So this we would get no property tax revenue for 10 years. We did have some IRB fees, about $125,000. We were also going to set up a TIF for them, and so basically the TIF will run 20 years. So from years 11 to 20, we would get no property tax. Then we had TIF fees that we included, which in all our TIFs we would do about $720 million. The big thing was our franchise fees would go up because of gas and electric. They needed a lot of electric, a lot of gas. So we were looking at about $35 million a year in franchise fees.
2031.
Then the EcoDevo grant, we were going to give them back their property taxes for year 35. So that was going to cost us about 10 million. And then we had to put in about $56 million in infrastructure. The TIF would cover some of that, but not
per year.
But we left $51 million. And then we had to give them a grant. So in the end, we had to figure all this in from 23 to 2058. We were going to lose about $30 million. So you think, well, why would you do that? When we look at property taxes, again, $100 million property, years 1 through 10, years 11 through 20, and years 21 through 35, we still got some property taxes from them. And so that was going to equal about $68.5 million that we would get from them for TIF funding and EcoDevo and things like that. So we were going to
Park improvements.
so we were going to get that money. No, wait a minute. Oh, no, this is what Integra was going to say. That's why they wanted all this.
I was gonna say, 'cause the property taxes is what threw me off.
Yep,
I was
yep.
like, I
So
didn't
they
think
were,
about
this
that.
is why it was so important that they were going to get a net benefit of $68.5 million
Water master plan.
over that period of time. That was their benefit. So where'd that, 56 million come from? Well, we had to do a traffic study and see what kind of streets needed to go in, what sizes, things like that. We guesstimated rock and web street improvements have to be at least a
Gas
3 lane,
system
maybe a
expansion.
5 lane, 15 million. Needed a frontage road along 254 because the state was looking at a interchange at Webb, so we needed to get them from Rock over. And then about 10 million in water main improvements, 25 in sewer main improvements, so that's where that 56 million came from. Okay, so capital improvement plan. Again, these are things that you all and that were on your list and what you brought to the table and what your staff brought to the table. So we've got police car in 2031 had 3 votes. Transferring $50,000 a year for Woodlawn project, that got 3 votes. Let's see, 3, 4. Sewer improvements, priority number 2, got 4 votes. Utility vehicle in 2027 got 4 votes. Kechi Road and Oliver Phase 2, that got 3 votes. Park improvements got 4 votes. New public works facility got 5 votes. Sewer master plan, no, let's see, water master plan got 4, sewer master plan got 5. Gas system expansion got 3. And that's it. But what you're seeing, I think you should take heart in is you all are agreeing on a number of things here. There's some of them that everybody agrees on. So you have some commonalities here to work for, some things that you all agree on, at least half of you are. And that's the sad thing when you have a council member missing is you don't get that. And ironically, that can change the whole picture. When I was doing, I think it was Douglas's, I did their strategic plan, and they had one council member that was not there, so they were ranking things, actually 1 through 10, ranking them. And one councilman wasn't there, so he sent me his rankings, and it changed the outcome on some of them. Because again, they were trying to get what's number 1 priority and what's number 10 priority. Well, that one vote could move what number 1 was. So again, so what it means in this process is, for example, Anderson to Oliver Street had 2, one more person could have 3, and it could be on there. So again, these are the things that staff is going to put together, and then when they bring the CIP to you, and you have a full council, may change, may add some more things to it. But this is a start for them to look at what needs to be budgeted.
What did you say that one was?
The what?
The Oliver and Anderson?
Yeah, Anderson, Madsen,
Okay.
Baird.
That's
That's being done this
being
year.
done this year. We just voted on it. at
It's
the last
already
meeting.
being completed this year.
We didn't know if you wanted that marked or not.
Oh, okay.
So
They said
that's
they
what I
didn't
mean.
exit, they just wrote stuff
Oh, okay.
inside.
Well, it was so it was on your previous one.
We've already had bids.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah,
Yeah.
because that one was I think I just pulled that from your one.
It is on the old one.
Yeah, I think that's what I just pulled.
It's like
Okay,
our
so that
last
one's being done.
Just
Good.
voted.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can just mark that one off since that one's being
It
done.
hasn't been done yet, probably.
Well, it's not complete, but we just voted on it to have it done this year.
I think Tom
Okay.
said that Anderson's in pretty good shape still.
So again, when you see the CIP, things that are on here will be on there, but you will have a discussion about, okay, are those still on there? Do we agree that we need to add something? So again, that's why I'm not holding you accountable for anything that you said today or voted on today. This is just give staff. Okay, so the next one, or the last one, let's see, what's the last one? Okay.
Council goals or something.
So council goals, this was a question that I had, is what are your goals for 2027? What do you want to see accomplished? Some of these relate to the budget, some of them don't. But again, it's good for staff to know, you to know as you're working through things. So, in fact, several of them don't have anything to do with the budget. But these are all things, when I ask for goals, your goals for 2027, these are things on there. And you'll see these in the report and things that you can be working on.
Please put your name on that.
I can do it.
So we have high priority, low priority completed. What if we're neutral on some of these, or do we?
I put an X in between most of those.
Yeah.
Well, I put it next to be medium priority.
Yeah.
It's kind of like somewhere between high and low.
I went between the lines.
So I guess you go between low and completed.
It goes out.
And neutral. I don't know.
That was a very tough one to do, honestly, because it was like you only have high or low, you're not ranking anything.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a challenge.
Yeah, just do it's like an age. It's low.
Okay.
I just answered every one.
And dogs.
Some of them I think, it's like senior services.
Oh, fun.
I just put question marks.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, that was on your previous one.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Online.
It's all online.
They meet by Zoom. Yeah.
On the permitting process. Okay.
Seems hard to put low priority, but just left them, so. The ones that aren't marked.
I probably gave out so many A's when I was a teacher.
We probably all know.
Yeah.
I don't give them, they have to earn them.
You know what?
I don't give A's, they have to earn them.
Oh, yeah, they are, yeah, that's right, I don't,
Yeah.
I never expelled a student from school, they lost the privilege of attending.
Okay, well, as I said, this is not easy. But for you, it's not easy, but for council, it really helps them. I mean, for staff, it really helps them a lot because they need some information to get started and get you what you want. So this is me back in 1988 when I graduated from college and was the noxious weed director in Jefferson County. McLeod is where that was at. So I don't think I had any gray hair then, and was several pounds lighter back then as well. So that's what city management will do to you.
I don't know how many hours I spent cutting musk thistles for my own.
Yep.
Did you play football for the Bulldogs?
Nope, I did not. Nope. And then I'm a big WSU supporter because that's where I got my master's and really getting that degree. I'm a big supporter of Wichita State and getting that degree really helped my career. And I for the most part, enjoyed it. Just like you guys, there's parts that aren't the most friendliest or the easiest to handle. But overall, public service is a need, and they actually, I think that was my 50th birthday. They actually staff brought in a woo shop to my office, so that was that's my kids there in Bel Air. And then when like I said, I went back to school. And I had 2 kids back then. I was working full time and had a son and a daughter. And my wife had to step up and do some babysitting on the evenings when I was going back and forth to school and stuff like that. But we both say it was worth it. Okay, so let's see. Cover that. The Integra stuff.
19.
Nothing on any of the others.
Okay, so the big question is, how do you pay for the priorities? So if you want some capital improvement stuff, you want to transfer some money for the Woodlawn project, how do you pay for that? So again, not an easy question, but I'm not going to hold you to anything you say tonight. But really what I want to know from you is what is off the table. You can see all the different ways that you can bring in additional revenue to fund CIP, projects, the new public works facility. Obviously you can borrow money for that, but then you gotta make a payment on it. So if staff is looking at needing to pay for the new public works facility, what's off the table? What are you, and I'm just open to hear your thoughts as a group. Anybody gonna say that utility rates are not open for discussion? Again, I'm not gonna hold you to, we're gonna raise rates, not saying that. I'm just saying, what would you be open to discussion if the right project and the right cost was there?
I think part of the challenge there is some of that's out of our control because we get our water from Wichita and our sewer goes to Wichita, and that things can change very dramatically there, and we have to respond to that. As far as how that impacts improvements, I guess what I'm saying is I'm not going to say that's off the table because we're not in complete control of that. Does that make sense?
And I think that makes sense, and I would also say it's not off the table in the sense that the utilities have to help fund the utility operations.
Yeah.
So
It's to be self-sustained.
we can't say, well, we're gonna have the general fund and the taxes pay for those services.
Right. Yep.
So I would say no, utility rates would have to be part of looking at utility infrastructure.
Yeah.
Now, how we stage that and how it looks, that's definitely where the conversation continues.
Yep. Yep.
But with that being said, I will say that Public Works does also do things that are outside of utilities. So to have that be kind of a hybrid of how it is funded is something that we would have to look at.
Yep, because typically you divide up, public works staff of water, sewer, gas, parks, they mow the parks, stormwater. Do you have a stormwater fee?
I didn't want us to put this on.
We
Yeah.
haven't always had one.
Some of them are tied, some of them have a winner.
Years ago to balance that out because they were way out.
Because
Then
of
high.
line.
EPA was just
They were a lot more
Just the
utility
highs,
heavy than
and
they ever
so-
shown.
Very tall.
So-
We try on a couple of them, like here,
I
retail
guess when-
development, two that have a nice high, two
For
have a
our
low.
conversation, I think that if we're looking at some of these, I don't think we say that any of these things are.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think
necessarily
anything's off the table just because we're doing very.
Council go.
However, I do think we've discussed this before, the 1% sales tax,
The one.
the city said that they were going, if they passed the 1%
Restore
sales tax,
residents'
the
faith.
city was gonna do the 4 phases of the
Okay,
arts and
so
business
this
district, and only
was
phase
part.
1 has been done. And that 1% was dedicated to completing those projects first.
So,
And I'm gonna disagree with you because I was on the council then, and we never promised.
Isn't the list true?
We voted on phase 1.
It was for the intersection project.
it was
Yeah.
for the intersection project,
And the
Mhm.
literature said multiple phases of the arts and business
but it
district
was,
that went
And
out.
we've got,
But it was.
so,
and Cherokee
that
has a
project-
long
that project
financial
was originally
secure
over $5
future
million
with
project.
neighbors looking out
But there
for
was
each
no way
other.
we were gonna be able to fund without a sales tax, we were reducing it down to a $3 million project. But the whole purpose was to get phase 1 completed.
Promote
We wouldn't have done any
thoughtful
phases
growth
if the
that
sales tax
expands
was
the city's
taxed.
tax base,
There was just no way to do it.
helping
We
to
didn't-
reduce the
we couldn't
burden on
afford to.
existing residents and keep property
So,
taxes more
we had a
stable.
grant on the
Yeah,
table,
there you go.
and COVID bailed us out for a couple of years. And it was either pass a sales tax
ensure that
to
as
fund
the
the
city
remaining
grows,
piece of that.
we continue to
And we had gotten
preserve
down
small
from
town
5
feel.
million to 3 million, not burying the power lines, to having the power lines. buried.
Strong community.
But
Does it expire?
we never,
It does not.
It does.
it does not, but we never voted on a phase 2, a phase 3.
Yes, this one.
No, but when the vote passed,
Maintain small town feel,
I
strong
think
community
that the integrity of that, the
as city
people,
grows.
was that we would use that solely for the purpose that we had stated, even though
Employees and elected
we do not
officials
technically
will be
have
servant
to,
leaders.
because we did not do a sunset, because that one would have expired in 10 years. We thought we would need 20 years to pay it back.
Mhm.
We didn't want to have to give it up to
Elected
another
officials
vote
and
of people.
employees be servant
For the future.
leaders.
So there's some, like I said, integrity on our part to maintain the use that we told the people it would be for.
And the number one thing people said that they wanted was sidewalks, and that project
City
all
known for
involved
valuing
sidewalks.
ethics.
So their sidewalks, did they go in?
Only one phase.
Oh, okay.
So
Actually getting the intersection done.
Well, yeah, that's,
We the
I mean,
people are
that's
valued to
amazing that you
listen
got a no sunset
everything,
sales tax.
Whether we agree or disagree.
And so at that point, it's really up to, just like most things, it can change with governing body members, how funds are spent. And so,
The key
but you
trial
can
is
also
able
go up
to
2%, you
reestablish
can go up
a
to
greater sense of
2%.
community.
an
So
additional
if you
1%
for
for truly general fund items.
Yep. So.
And that could be put in with the sunset, because that would.
Oh, I know.
That would-
I didn't
Because
say
it's not gonna go forward.
I
I mean, people would be like,
Yeah.
forget that.
Let's skip
What
one.
we
Which one, that
Yeah.
one?
What we will
Community
do, and what we
feel.
should do.
Yeah.
While growth,
Yeah, there's a lot of.
while growth will come, that we are considerate and work diligently to maintain the small town character. To me, that's the same as that one up there, but
Sales tax is for.
That's
If it's for property relief,
That's,
pretty
Yeah.
common now.
and that's what I'm hearing.
3 lows, we don't want that.
Do you want us
More
to
community involvement.
use that? Because I felt the same way. It was passed for the intersection project. And I actually want to see if we do phase 2 down to, toward the
Explore
post office.
funding
if we do
opportunities.
whichever the next phase would be toward the park with everything going on there. I'm fine looking at that, but I also want to hear from people if we can give some property
Sidewalk
tax relief,
expansion.
do you want us to keep the sales tax and use it for streets? Because we can't.
Yeah.
But I want to know that,
Mhm.
because for me, when I look at it, I know it's a little more risky for a city because it's not guaranteed money. But on a sales tax, if I need to, I can choose not to spend that money. It's like, I don't have that choice with property tax. I gotta pay that or I get in trouble. So
Yep.
to me, it gives constituents a choice. But
I think that's a great conversation, but like, how do we find out what the people want? That should be a discussion that we have, is how do we want to move forward, trying to find out what they do want.
So that's really what I wanted to know is if anything was off the table, because I have witnessed council members say our rates are too high and I will not support any any rate increase, regardless of, again, in a setting like this, no. So that's why I ask is so that when staff, they need to know if the majority of you are saying, all I hear is complaints about our utility prices, and I will not vote to increase them. Staff needs to know that. It's totally fine that you're saying I'm open to these as long as the project is what we want, that it can it can pay for itself through these rate increase, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, you're going to want to know all that. But the key is that you're willing to listen, and staff wouldn't waste their time putting something together and say, well, if we did a $5 a year increase, we could do X, Y, and Z with it. And then for you to say, no, I'm not proving anything like that. So that's all we're doing. And so I appreciate that you're willing to listen to any of those. Okay, so let's look at, so what are the council goals for 2027? Restore residents' faith. The city has their best interests at heart. Had 4 as a high priority. Ensure that Kechi has a long, financial, secure future with neighbors looking out for each other. That was 5, high. Promote thoughtful growth. That expands the city's tax base. That was 5 for high priority. Ensure the city grows, but keep that small town, strong community. Again, a 5, high. Employees, elected officials will be servant leaders. That was a 4, high. We're known for valuing ethics. Again, high. Let's see here. People are valued or listened to. Whether or not we agree, we engage in conversation. That was high priority. That when growth comes, that we are considerate, work diligently to keep that small town character. That's high priority. More community involvement. That's tough, but that's a priority. But it's getting tough with everybody as busy as they are and things. But that's what really makes a community. A community is that volunteer. Explore funding opportunities. That we talked. That's why we were talking about that, and grants, things like that.
I'm curious how many sidewalk expansions up there.
Yes, there was 3 high for sidewalk expansions. So again, these were just things that you as a governing body said that you had as goals for 2027, and most of them are not budget related. I'll put them in my report, but those are things that you'll want to work on as a council, is keeping those things at the forefront. So what's next? Like I said, I'll create a final report and I'll have it done within the next month, and it'll highlight, give you the results of the surveys and things. I don't use names, but just so it's the information that you need to know. And then staff and council will get a copy of that. Staff's going to focus on those priorities, probably at least 5, depending on what they are and how it affects the budget. You need to look at it annually. You'll have this as a template, and so next year you'll need to go back and look at it again and say, what did we get accomplished? Or what did we not get that we requested? What do we need to work on? And again, priorities will change. I guarantee they'll change from next year as the environment changes, as you change, and in 2 years, the election can change things too. So, well, thank you for allowing me to come. I feel like I'm kind of home. We're right in my backyard, at least, and I appreciate the opportunity. I hope that I helped. And like I said, you'll get a report. You'll get all the details. Matt's got a copy of this because there's things I didn't cover that you can go back and read. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I would entertain a motion. Oh,
Maybe
sorry.
just a minute for council, if you want a copy of the PowerPoint presentation, I can get it for you in paper. It's like 100 and some pages, or I can provide it to you digitally. So just shoot me an email, let me know, and I'll get it to you however you want it.
Anything else? We're good? Okay, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Generally, we're having a recess
No, this is not connected to anything
Okay,
else.
we had a recess for the next meeting for our next workshop. Yeah,
My bad.
That's okay.
it's late.
Anyone want a motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
Motion by Council President Hedstrom, second by Councilmember Moreland. All in favor? Motion passes 4-0. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.